Thank you, Nikki. And now I would like to call forth the Ghee to deliver the second constructive speech.
Say I'm an immigrant from Mexico. I believe in the American dream. I believe that when I go there, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to get a house, I'm going to get food and water. But the reality is so different. When I go there, I face discrimination because of the color of my skin. Because I don't have the proper skills, I can't get a job. Life is horrible. This is a reality that is true, and this is something they have chosen to ignore, never dealt with through any of their speakers. But before I even move on to my rebuttals today, let's look at the things that they have dropped on their side. This idea of citizen priority and sovereignty was brought up by Joshua, never dealt with. What have they told us? They told us, oh, it won't infringe on sovereignty. Why and how? We demand an explanation. When your locals are losing jobs, when your government cannot focus on its own people, we think sovereignty is compromised. This is something that they have to justify. So let's deal then with their case proper on three large grounds. Firstly, on equality. Secondly, on the merits of immigration. And thirdly, on the very dubious idea of colonialism. Let's talk about equality. They told us today this, that it's unfair that one is born in a developing country and therefore everyone should have a right to life. Firstly, we think that the problem of inequality is regretful, but it's something that is extremely difficult to solve and unrealistic to solve. Because in their case, some people will still be left behind. What happens to your people who can't migrate, who can't afford the migration? They'll be left behind. Your inequality simply is going to stay there. Even if so, we've already proven to you that even when they come to the developed world, they're not going to have a sudden boost of equality. Their lives are not going to dramatically improve. We've already talked about how there are other methods of doing this. We talked about economic advice. We talked about infrastructure, investment. We think our side is a more long-term solution. Why? Because we built the countries from scratch. We allow a long-term solution where we provide jobs in the long run when we have investment within the country. And thirdly, we think it's also very unfair for locals. You stand for equality, but you are already being very unequal to the locals in the country within itself, because they are taking your jobs away. This is something, again, they have to deal with. And moreover, we think that they widen inequality. Why so? Because you're taking the best, the brightest from the developing world to the developed world. You're taking their labor when they depend on it most. Your Botswana, your Ethiopia, they need their men, they need their labor. You drain it from them, leaving them to fester and rot. That is horrible, and we cannot believe that you can stand here and tell us that. Let's move on to the second idea, but before that, yes, madam.
Actually, this also educated brain drain, because these people would go to this country even if the borders are closed, because they could be able to integrate, to go study. These countries would allow them to go if the borders are closed or no.
Thank you, madam. So you're already conceding there is a brain drain. Now when there's an open border, you exacerbate the problem because they can come in at a faster rate. So thank you for actually bringing something that would benefit our side. Let's talk about this second point then, on the merits of immigration, where they told us, oh, your basic standard of living will improve, your later generation will benefit, remittances will be sent back. That's a good thing. Firstly, I don't think we need to mention this anymore. We've already proven time and time again how standard of living won't improve. Xenophobia, oppression, this is something repeated. Furthermore, we think that no, your remittances won't be sent back. Why? Because on your side, your open door policy, my entire clan, my entire family can come over to the developed world. So why would I have an incentive to send money back when everybody there is here? So we really see that their policy actually opens a can of worms for themselves. We don't think that's a good thing. And thirdly, let's deal with this idea of colonialism, shall we? They basically told us that the present and the past, the colonial powers, although that is already a very outdated concept, has been exploiting these people. Firstly, not every developed country is a colonial power. This is something that they have to grapple with. Furthermore, we've already talked about how infrastructure, TNCs, are brought in to the developing world and they benefit from it. Your oil pipes in Nigeria, Botswana, they are now thriving economies because of colonial or your so-called colonial or foreign investment. And therefore, we think that there isn't any debt to be paid. Furthermore, we think it's ridiculous in the age of globalization, where they think it's a one-sided thing. International trade has advanced to such a stage that even your developing countries are benefiting from it. It's a two-way process. Your Nigeria, which is a thriving African country, trades with who? Your USA, your EU. These are your large primary trading partners, and they have to deal with this. There is no moral obligation. Therefore, we think this point falls. Furthermore, we think exploitation also occurs in their case, because when these immigrants come in, they get exploited by their employers, they don't have a job. Sometimes your mates from Mexico come in and they have to deal with very low wages. This is something that they also have to deal with. They also propensate exploitation.
Sir.
No, thank you. So let's then talk about my two constructives. Firstly, holding back the developing country. Secondly, pathway to hell. This is something already brought up throughout many speakers. Let's talk about holding back developing countries. The thesis of this point is this. When you impose an arbitrary moral obligation, what you do is you hinder the developing world from progressing. Why? Because you entrench them in poverty and you make them over-dependent. The nature of developing countries are as such. Highly labor-intensive. Your Ethiopia, Botswana depend on their mining industry, their agriculture industry. So what happens on their side? When all their labor is transferred to the developed world, there is a massive labor drain, which is exacerbated on their side. We'll give you the example of the Philippines. They already have a shortage of doctors, they already have a brain drain. Now it's going to be worsened on their side because they have an open door policy and basically everyone can go in. This is the practical realities of the thing. We think it's immoral of you to entrench the developing world. Furthermore, you breed a culture of overdependence. Why? Because now there's a moral obligation to do so. The burden is shifted from the governments of the developing world to the developed world. There's an excuse now because they have a moral obligation to take care of me. I don't have to do it myself. We think this culture of complacency and overdependence is something you breed, something you have to deal with. And we think this spills over to the borders of international aid as well. This culture of overdependence may affect the area of international aid. We'll give you the example of Cambodia. $687 million in foreign aid, and yet 1/3 of the people live in poverty. Why? Because of the same spirit of complacency that they breed on their side. And therefore we think what they really do is to entrench the developing world. They don't benefit it. Let's then talk about my second idea, pathway to hell. And this has been something brought forth already in my rebuttal. This idea of how basically when you force all these immigrants to enter, their livelihoods are unlikely to improve. It's going to be a pathway to even more oppression, even more horrible conditions. Why is this so? Your immigrant coming in isn't going to have a luxurious life. He's going to live in your slums, he's going to live in your ghettos, and we think in these places, the living conditions are horrible. And we think that there's no sanitation in these places, and this is something that they encourage. It is worse in their case, because their side argues for mass migration. When you have hundreds and thousands of immigrants, how are you going to accommodate them? How are you going to find the resources, the rooms, the houses to accommodate them? They're all going to squeeze into small houses. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's far worse on their side. Furthermore, we've already talked about this idea of xenophobia. How is it better that when your immigrant comes in, he gets shot in the street because of the color of his skin? That is something disgusting, something that they promote. So at the end of the day, because we've shown you on two levels, the developed world doesn't benefit, the developing world doesn't benefit, go with our side.